I am joined today by Brad Koehn. Brad is the owner of Koehn Consulting and the CEO of Prosper Dental Solutions. With 3 decades of technology professional services experience under his belt, Brad helps owners of technology businesses, dentists, and dental service organizations to work on their practice rather than for their practice. Brad, thank you so much for being in my orbit and joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lauren. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk to you about this whole on versus for, along with a number of other facets of running a business. Let's dive into that first, though, that distinction. So you've helped a lot of business owners, and myself included, have got into this thinking, oh, this is great. I won't just have a typical job. I'll work for myself. This will be a real piece of cake, right? It'll be fun. And in fact, I got myself a much harder job. So where do you see business owners making the mistake when they start a company right off the bat, working too much for it?
It's a difficult mindset shift, and I really want to applaud folks and you for diving in and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna create my own business." What we tend to do when we create a business is we create an environment like what we're accustomed to, which was I have a job and I work for myself. And that's very different from I own a business. At the end of the day, a business is a machine that makes money. And it's helpful framing for thinking about what is a business. When you work for yourself, you still have a job. You still are, kind of holding yourself in account in a way that isn't terribly appropriate, because your job as a business owner is to fine tune the money making engine, not to get certain tasks done. Not that tasks don't need to be done, but your job really is to stay on the bigger picture of, am I creating an environment where the money making machine is running well? Am I creating relationships with customers and with staff? Am I putting in place the pieces that are going to make this run well? And that's very, very different from the environment that most of us, myself included, came from.
Do you think owners should be thinking, how can I get as much off my plate as possible?
When you start a business, and I'll use professional services as an example, just because it's the background that I came from. Let's say you make a technology consulting company, and you started it because you were really good at writing code. And what becomes important to you is, I want to write code. That's how I know I'm doing good work. And that isn't actually what you need to be working on. What you need to be working on is creating opportunities for people to write code, finding customers. A lot of the things that you didn't have to do in your previous job, whether you were a consultant coder or working at an enterprise, the work came to you just kind of magically, and it never stopped. But when you've got the business, you're going to be pivoting towards doing some of those other things, and you have to let go of the reason that you got into the business in the first place, which is I want to make a great company that makes great code. And it's like, that's nice, but you're going to create that environment for the people who work for you, not for you. And that's the difference between baking and running the bakery. You can be a great baker, and that's nice, but that's a job. And what the world needs desperately is people who are interested in creating a bakery where other bakers can be successful. Even when they don't start out being as good as you are, your job as a leader and as the owner of the business is to help them to become better than you were when you were baking.
That's a great point. Do you think that the reason we are in such a dire need is it's not the trajectory that universities and academia points us in, insofar as we learn how to become largely craftsmen, and instead of learning how to manage craftsmen and lead teams and build businesses, build these money-making machines?
I think we're in a situation where the market created an enormous demand, at least in the technical fields, created enormous demand for individual contributors. In a lot of cases, we select for people who can sit in front of a computer for hours and hours at a time and work really hard on a problem to the isolation of all else. And when they're really good at it, we promote them to management. And it's like, well, you didn't select me for my ability to have good, positive interactions with people. And it's not surprising for them to conclude, well, you must want me to create a team of people that code as well as I do. And then they become micromanagers and they can't let anybody else make decisions because then the team won't be as effective as when I ran it and I was the best one. And so therefore, right. And all of these kind of natural, normal behaviors bring themselves up, and you end up with a lot of really, really common challenges in what I like to call craftsperson-owned businesses. They tend to focus themselves on perfecting the craft rather than focusing on perfecting the money-making machine. And it's hard, right? You went into this thinking, I'm going to be the great baker, I'm going to be the great coder, I'm going to be the best recruiter. That's going to be my focus. And it's like, that's nice. That knowledge will serve you well, but you need to let that go and create an environment where your job is to help others be at least as good as you were, hopefully better.
Where do solopreneurs then, so the ones who maybe don't want to produce a very large money making machine, but just enough to pay the bills, they are still craftspeople, they like not having a boss that they have to report to in the strict W-2 9 to 5 sense. Where do they fall in this sort of your idea of where we're headed to as a culture?
I think um, I think the whole notion of employment is changing. I was a solopreneur for a long time. I was a contract software engineer, and it was a great lifestyle for me at that point in my life. You make more money than you do either as a consultant employee or certainly as an employee of a business that is not a tech business. So you make more money, you're on call less because you're paid hourly. So they don't want to call you in the middle of the night to work on problems. They don't want you to work overtime. Um, from a lifestyle perspective, the solopreneur thing is great. What will tend to happen, and what happened to me, is the money is great, and you can drive your rate up, and there is a ceiling, at least in the commodity solopreneur space. And I was a commodity software engineer, but there's a ceiling that you'll hit that you can't get past. And over time, what happened to me was, 15, 20 years of writing other people's business applications, it doesn't have a ton more to offer me. And I'm starting to get bored. And especially in the technical fields, getting bored is really career lethal when you start to get gray hair, because nobody will hire you anymore. You're expensive and you don't have relevant skills. So certainly the market that we have has demonstrated that the myth of job security of work, and when you work at an enterprise, is pretty false. Companies are ready to turn you out once you're not producing for them. In 11 years of being a solo contractor, I spent 6 weeks not working when I wanted to be working out of 11 years. And, I 10 out of 10 recommend that over being an employee. Now, that doesn't work for every kind of position, but it does for an awful lot of them. And it's worth looking at. But you have to have a mindset of, hey, I can create more value. I can keep more of the value that I'm creating for myself, rather than letting most of it go to my consulting company that I work for, or my employer if I'm in an enterprise. And yeah, 10 out of 10 recommend it. Take those reins if it's at all possible for you, and do it. And if you don't know how, reach out. There's a lot of us doing it who can give advice.
So would you say that is one really great avenue, or the great avenue, for craftsmen who don't ultimately want to build a big money making machine or have employees, but want to not, again, be subject to the demands or the corporate overlords at a big enterprise. They want to ultimately have a little bit more autonomy, make more money per hour, stay on the cutting edge. Do you think that's the route that's really best for craftspeople, as opposed to those who are really focused on building a bigger business, something that they could have generational wealth from, and provide opportunities for a lot of others? Because it seems like there could be this fork in this, proverbial road here.
It is, and I encourage you to try. It is a fork in the road, and I encourage folks to not let fear of the unknown keep them in a job that they're uncomfortable with, where they don't feel like they're getting as much value for their work as they should. You're trading your life in exchange for money. That's the job of being an individual contributor. I'm going to give you a fraction of my life, and in exchange, you're going to pay me. And if I'm going to trade my life, I want to get the most money for that transaction as I possibly can. And to me, that made a ton of sense. So it pivoted towards a way that enabled me to do that. And it could be that you're in a time in life when you don't want to, and that things change over time, like they did for me. When I started out as a contractor, I didn't want the headache of getting into management and finance and all of these other things. I just really wanted to be an expert. And if that's what you want, that solo model allows you to extract a ton of value for your efforts in a pretty low risk way. It's not like making a startup. 95% of startups fail, but most people who go the solo practice route do just fine. And you might start out making a little less than you possibly could, but by developing relationships with recruiters who are great at telling you, like, this is what the market is paying, this is what I'm seeing out there, this is what's hot. They really want you to be earning because that's how they earn. That's a great resource for kind of understanding what are the going rates out there, what should I be charging, what can I be getting for myself in this space. So yeah, 10 out of 10 recommend. I was really nervous, but I took the jump and did it. And like I said, for 11 years, it was a great ride.
Going back to the idea of running the bakery, though, where do you think most craftspeople who decide to run a bigger shop go amok? So, what do you think they don't spend time cultivating for their skill set to be able to run the shop well?
I think that most craftsperson owners that I work with overemphasize the value of their craft as opposed to the value of the company that they're trying to build. They kind of start a business with, I'm going to do it right, as opposed to, I'm going to build a machine that makes the most money in the limited time that I have on earth. And that's natural and normal because that relies on the skills that you have developed over the years in order to get there. It's such a common thing to see people who ignore sales because sales is icky, or have such big ideas about the value of what they know. And once they bring it to the market will just flock to them. And it's like that is not the way that this tends to go. Adapt to what the market is giving you and create an environment where you're not the star anymore. You're not the center of attention, where the people in your organization get to have that spot and get to feel like, yes, I am really doing great work here at XYZ Corporation. But it's hard for folks to let that go. It's comfortable. It's the skill set that got them there. It's hard for them to learn how to reframe and think about, okay, I need to make an environment where my recruiters can be successful, where my HR can be and finance can be successful. And I need to create an environment where the people that are doing the work can also be successful, and where my customers can succeed, and where we can have those things. I'm a ringmaster, not the doer anymore. What makes a great business is making money. That's the whole point, is running a good money-making engine. So people struggle with learning some of the base skills that go into that are emotional self-regulation, that you might have gotten away with being a bit of a prima donna in your previous life, and the world may well have revolved around you. But when you're a business owner, you have to learn how to rein that in, especially when you're feeling under pressure, so that the people around you can make good decisions, because they're always going to be closer to the problem than you are. And so learning, how do I rein myself in and not just jump in and start giving orders, but jump in and start asking questions and listening to people, and helping them solve problems that they have so that they can succeed, is a big shift when you've been used to being an individual contributor.
Yeah. Not only are you trying to find a problem that the market wants you to solve, but like you said, you're creating a space where you're inspiring and empowering those in your charge to solve problems as well. That is really difficult, checking that ego at the door.
It is. And a lot of people were very successful at whatever their craft was, and they're right to celebrate it. And it's just kind of celebrated in private away from folks, and let your people find out what the market wants. Let your people build those engines and processes. You're not smarter than everybody. You may be the best at your craft in your business. You want to create an environment where you're not, where, the people that are coming in might not be as good as you were, starting your business, but you've created an environment that gets them there. You know how to develop those folks so that they get there and they think, yeah, this is a place I want to stay, because my gosh, how far can I really go? Like, look at what I've been able to accomplish.
I can't even count how many times I've heard people advocate for starting product versus services companies. I know you've spent a lot of time with services professionals and starting your own services company.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on get a product off the ground because it makes money while you sleep, whereas a service business is only as good as you and the people who are currently awake and working on it? What are your thoughts on that dichotomy?
Either kind of business makes money when you sleep. The owner of a professional services business isn't typically doing a lot of delivery themselves once they get above a fairly small headcount. They're typically making money when other people in their business are working. So if you're willing to sleep in a little bit, it's okay. They can both make money. The growth rate is much slower on a professional services company, but you start making money almost right away. If you start the business with a few clients in mind, and a few contracts in mind, you've hit the ground running, and you are making money from day one. Um, the failure rate is lower. And you get to work more with people. It can be a less purely transactional relationship. You're building relationships with people. So it kind of depends on what you want. If you've got more of a thrill seeker mentality and you're like, I have an idea for a better mousetrap, in tech particularly, you can get that mousetrap built and running and introduced to the world at large very, very quickly, if you can find the capital and actually kind of get through that no revenue period. The professional services side, it's a slower curve, but it's also less likely to get disrupted. The exit profile tends to be much less dramatic. There's a lot to be said for working in that space. It's the one that I know the best, so that's the one that I'm hyping. And the kids in business school these days are all about the SaaS, because it's got that hockey stick potential, but most of them don't get there. Not everybody's idea becomes the next big thing, and it's sad.
Well, I appreciate you giving services businesses a little love. And like I said, ever since I started this company, I've been told I should have a product. What am I doing wrong? As I mentioned, I would love to talk about business exits, because it's certainly not something that I thought of when I thought about starting a business. It wasn't, oh, now how can I get out of this thing? But I do believe that's probably important, because this is, like you've talked about, time is finite. Our time here on earth is finite. Our time that we want to spend working is finite, it has an end date. So what should business owners, either for product or services, but what should business owners be thinking about when they start a business when it comes to the end?
It kind of goes back to what I talked about at the beginning. Do you have a job or do you have a business? Well, you only make money at a job when you're working, and a business can make money whether you're working at it or not. So if you've owned a stock, if you've owned a mutual fund, if you have a 401k that is invested in anything other than treasury bills, you own part of a company, or probably a whole bunch of them, and they give you money from time to time in the form of dividends. And those dividends are the profits, your share of the profits that that company generated. If you own the entire company, you get all of those profits. Initially, you're also probably working for the company. You're hiring people, you're figuring out the market, you're leading people into those positions. But you can own the company and back away from the execution of it by hiring your own CEO and paying them. They've got a job. You get the profits, or the lion's share of the profits that the business creates, and you're not necessarily working there. Well, that's a money-making engine, and that is a thing that other people might want to buy your money-making engine, provided that you're not in the middle of it. And another challenge that the craftsperson owner can get into is they built their company around them. All decisions in the company go explicitly through just them. And it comes time to sell their business, and they go and they talk to an M&A, mergers and acquisitions company, and they think, my company is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I have talked to a lot of M&As, and they have had a lot of conversations with an awful lot of business owners who are that craftsperson in the middle of every decision. And they have to deliver the bad news. Imagine that you're the buyer, of a prospective buyer of one of these companies, where the one person who sits at the middle of every single decision, that the whole company wouldn't be there except for their genius, their incredible genius, wants to quit. And you're going to buy this business because it's worth some multiple of the earnings that only happen because the person who wants to quit has been there. And you're like, well, what exactly am I getting for my money? Like, I buy a business because I'm giving you money today for earnings tomorrow, and you're telling me that there won't be any earnings tomorrow because you're the only reason that the company makes any money. No thanks. Like, that's not a good idea for me. That's not going to work for me. And as a business owner, you were a craftsperson, you were an expert at your craft. And it's like, well, if you want to have a successful business, you got to let that go. And you got to focus on running the business really well. And if you want a good exit, you've got to let that go too, and let other people come in. Now that your company has more or less stable, it's got a position in the market, whether it's a product business or a services business, it's on a trajectory. It's making money routinely. Hopefully it's also growing at the same time. That is a great time to say, okay, our processes and procedures are pretty well locked down. I'm going to bring in, or hopefully promote from within, a new leader to take on a lot of the executive decision making that I've been doing for a long time. And I'm going to back away into more of an advisory position, so that in a few years, when they've got a proven track record of growth and running it effectively, a buyer can look at this and say, well, geez, Lauren, you own this business and it's running like a dream. And I went and talked to your executive team, and they're like, yeah, no, Lauren basically cashes checks every 90 days that we send her. And, like, that's about her involvement. But we do the hiring and the promoting and the sales and the marketing and the finance. Like, we've got processes for all of that we wrote down, and here they are. And that's valuable to me, because that's a money-making engine that will make money when you, the owner, are gone. And that, again, is a big change. And as human beings, change is not a thing that we're necessarily very good at.
That's an excellent point about, and it's very challenging as business owners when you get into a business and you knew the thing that you were really great at, and then you built a business and you don't want to let it go. What about those who are not very creative, who wouldn't consider themselves a craftsperson, but they want to be an entrepreneur? They want to run a business. how would you advise them to go about purchasing or getting into a business ownership type of arrangement?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it right there in the question is you don't have to start a business. In fact, the skill set involved in starting a business is very different from the skill set involved in running a business or owning a business. And there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurship through acquisition instead of through building it from the ground up. You can buy into an existing business. And especially today, there are a lot of people in their 60s and 70s who are aging out and their businesses are available for a song, especially if they are one of those craftsperson owners and you happen to be a craftsperson with better ideas about how to run a business. You can buy those businesses for very little. Oftentimes the seller will finance the business to you. And so you don't even have to take out a bank loan. You're just taking out a loan from the previous owner, paying them a fixed fee every month. Hopefully you grow the business so that making that payment is very easy. And it doesn't have to be, a sexy SaaS company or a professional services business. Like you can get into businesses with assets, like you can own a car wash, you can own a plumbing company, you can own an electrical supply company, you can own, and oftentimes there are craftspeople there that understand the mechanics of how to deliver their service or how to run that company really, really well, that can hold those positions and make those choices for you while you focus on the money-making engine, while you focus on are our margins where they need to be? Are we growing? How are we going to finance growth if that's a thing that you're going to need financial help for? How are we doing on our loans? You can focus on the parts of the business that you deliver value to, and really you want to let others take on the decision making for the other parts. If you get into a manufacturing business, you probably want to know something about manufacturing. You probably want to have some background in it because it's not like any business can be run by you. You're going to be put in a position where you have to make choices about, hopefully informed choices about, are we going to grow right now? Are we going to conserve right now? Are we, can we afford to give out huge raises to everybody? Like, what is the mode of operation that we're going to be in? And to figure that out, you've got to have some industry background to draw on in order to make some of those choices. That said, a lot of them aren't that complicated. And if you're good at building relationships and building a network, you can find other people who own similar businesses and get some of their point of view on what it is that you've just gotten yourself into. If it scares you and you're going to be up nights and you're going to be grouchy at home and miserable and chugging Pepto-Bismol, out of the 2-liter bottle, maybe that isn't the right fit for you. But you can also, just to kind of soften that a little bit, everybody's scared at first. It's okay. It's learning how to recognize that fear as being just an emotion and learning some skills to overcome that emotion and not let it drive you to distraction or ill health or bad choices.
On that note, I think it is a great note to conclude on because it inspires people like me to keep fighting the good fight, keep opening doors and walking through them. You never know until you actually give it a shot. And to your point, as scary as it might be, there are a tremendous amount of resources out there. There's people like yourself who've shepherded a number of business owners through these different transitions. And there's a lot of people with battle scars to tell you what pitfalls to avoid. So I think leveraging your network, just like when you're looking for a job, building networks of people, both recruiters or people who are on the job scene and can tell you what's up. I mean, I think this is a lot of ways no different, building networks of people who've been there before, who know what's going on. So thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate everything you shared today. I have a lot that I can learn as a business owner and as someone still navigating this entrepreneurial journey. So thank you for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations and welcoming others into this as well.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a joy. I look forward to more conversations in the future.